Ground ambulances have officially hit a physical response wall that they simply can't break, which means autonomous drones are now the only viable way forward to save lives during cardiac emergencies.
To really get into this explainer, we have to talk about the absolute physical limits of our current 911 system. Right now, when a sudden cardiac arrest happens, it takes an emergency medical vehicle an average of about 8 minutes to physically navigate through urban or suburban traffic. But the clock doesn't just stop when the ambulance parks. Paramedics have to unload, get their gear out, and actually run to the patient. So it's usually minute 11 before a person actually receives their first shock. And the reality is, you literally cannot drive an ambulance any faster or pack gear any quicker without breaking the laws of physics or causing a massive accident. We've just hit a geographical wall.
And the math here is absolutely brutal. During an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, every single minute a patient goes without a shock, their odds of survival drop by 7 to 10%. If a patient gets shocked within those first 2 minutes, survival can be as high as 70%. But by minute 5, that's cut entirely in half. And by minute 10, which is right around the exact time those paramedics are finally rushing through the front door, those survival odds have plummeted to practically zero. The human brain and heart just can't wait for a truck driving on a road.
And if you don't live in a city, geography actively weaponizes that timeline against you. For patients living in extremely rural areas, researchers partnering with James City County found that those survival odds dropped to, quote, almost zero. I mean, in a remote setting, an ambulance response might take 15, maybe 20 minutes. So survival in rural communities globally is shockingly low for one really simple reason. We physically cannot get an automated external defibrillator, an AED, to the patient fast enough using standard vehicles on paved roads.
So the crucial takeaway here is that this is absolutely not a failure of our paramedics. It's a failure of physics. The limits of ground EMS are completely bound by stoplights, traffic jams, and rough terrain. Drones, on the other hand, operate on direct flight paths. They don't care about red lights, they never get stuck behind a garbage truck, they just deploy immediately and fly as the crow flies. It has literally become biologically necessary to bypass roads altogether if we actually want to move the needle on cardiac arrest survival.
And this is where highly capable, high-speed autonomous delivery vehicles like the Sparrow X1000 and the Indra Robotics M10C come into play. And just to be clear, these aren't the little drones you buy at a toy store. The Sparrow can fly at 80 kilometers an hour with a 25-kilometer range, carrying a heavy medical payload. These machines are engineered to fly beyond visual line of sight. That means a dispatcher can launch one to a GPS coordinate while the ground ambulance is still turning on its sirens, dropping that life-saving AED right at the scene and shaving off the deadliest minutes of the emergency.
And the real-world data completely backs this up. During American Heart Association feasibility studies in rural Ontario, dispatchers launched an ambulance and an AED drone at the exact same time during mock 911 calls. Across all sorts of different scenarios, the results were undeniable. The drones arrived 1.8 to 8 full minutes faster than the ground ambulances. In one simulation with a 20-kilometer drive, the drone beat the medics by 8 minutes. That is a total game-changer for emergency medicine.
Because reclaiming those lost minutes is everything. If you can deliver an AED within that tiny 2 to 3 minute window, you shift survival probabilities right back up to 70%. Think about that for a second. Instead of almost zero, you now have a 7 in 10 chance of saving a life. We're not just optimizing a response system here. We're fundamentally revolutionizing human survival odds during the most critical medical crisis a person can face.
The amazing part is, we're no longer just talking about simulations. Dr. Monique Starks from Duke Health put it perfectly, noting how they're working to close that critical gap between arrest and treatment. Duke Health, working with public safety agencies, is actually out there dispatching drones carrying AEDs during real 911 calls right now in Forsyth County, North Carolina. Telecommunicators and drone pilots are working seamlessly together, pulling this tech out of the test fields and putting it directly into the chaotic, high-stakes reality of life-or-death emergencies.
We're already seeing this global impact firsthand. Alongside Forsyth County, medical drone networks are being tested heavily across Europe. And in Sweden, they had a massive breakthrough recently. A medical drone network recorded the first ever life saved by delivering an AED before the ambulance could even get there. The drone dropped the defib, bystanders attached the pads, and the patient survived. This is proof positive. Drone-assisted EMS isn't some futuristic sci-fi concept anymore. It's happening right now.
But here's the catch. Delivering the hardware is really only half the battle. We have to talk about a massive psychological barrier. According to a PLOS research study on real-life bystanders, just dropping a drone in a front yard doesn't save a life. A human being has to have the presence of mind to run out, grab the AED, open it up, and stick those pads on a dying person's chest. This is where cutting-edge technology slams headfirst into human panic.
During these extreme high-stress moments, bystanders face this terrifying calculation. One bystander from the study summed it up perfectly. It's the balance of odds, really, balancing risk against time. People are terrified that if they stop doing CPR and leave the patient's side to go grab a drone package, they might actually cause more harm. They have to decide, in a split second, if leaving their dying loved one alone on the floor to go fetch a robotic delivery from the driveway is actually worth the risk.
The hurdles here are super complex. You've got the fear of causing harm, plus the totally unfamiliar experience of interacting with a drone while running on pure adrenaline. But one of the craziest findings from the simulation studies is the intense sensory overload. Bystanders really struggle to follow the automated voice shouting from the AED, telling them to do 30 compressions, while simultaneously listening to the 911 dispatcher on speakerphone. When those two voices overlap and conflict, it causes massive confusion and, worst of all, delay.
So, to actually complete this chain of survival, the human element has to be engineered just as rigorously as the drone itself. 911 dispatch centers need precise, standardized scripts so they can calmly and clearly tell bystanders exactly when to pause CPR, how to safely grab the package, and when to shock the patient. On top of that, building a strong co-responder model where off-duty pros or trained neighbors are also alerted gives that crucial social support so one single bystander isn't forced to make these terrifying life-or-death calculations completely alone.
We know exactly how fast an ambulance can safely drive, and the math definitively proves that ground transport has peaked. Integrating autonomous drones is no longer just a cool experiment. It's the only viable way forward to reclaim those minutes and save human lives. The tech works, the math is indisputable, and lives are already being saved. So the only real question left is, if the physical limits of ground transport cannot be changed, is your city ready to adopt the autonomous technology required to finally break the 8-minute wall?